Welcome to the Total Boss Podcast, and I'm your host, Christiano Green, a podcast where we talk about finding fulfillment through self-development, being a leader of your own life, and getting the most out of it as well. Tenacity, originality, talent, authenticity, and being legendary. It's all about living your best life. Hello, all you total bosses out there, and welcome to another episode of the Total Boss Podcast. I'm your host, Christiano Green, and I'm a gay men's relationship coach helping gay men to find long-lasting love in their life. Now, this week on the podcast, I am sharing with you an interview I did on another person's podcast. Wyatt is his name. And on this episode, he interviews me about all things to do with me and why I love doing what I do and helping gay men find long-lasting love, and what are some of the things that really, hold gay men back from love. So take a listen, and I'll see you on the other side. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Wonderful. Listen, I am so glad to have you on, Wyatt. What I wanted to ask you first was, first of all, your name Christiano it's got panache, it has flair. Actually, my friend, is a bedroom name. So check this out. I'm pretty sure people have said, oh, Christiano.
Yes, they've said that to me plenty of times, and Cristiano Ronaldo. Oh, yeah. So yeah, I get all of that jazz all the time.
I wanted to throw that in. That's a great icebreaker.
Totally.
Anyway, my friend, you're an international relationship coach for gay and same gender loving men.
Correct.
And let me pull a quote from you. You have stated, and I quote, I help gay men attract and create loving, happy, passionate, and loving, long-lasting relationships. So let's unpack that.
Sure. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I've been helping gay men for the past 2.5 years. I've had my business, and I've been coaching in corporate for 15 years before that. So I've got almost 20 years of experience coaching.
Wow.
But when I was in the corporate world, it just wasn't really, I enjoyed it, but it just wasn't really what my calling was. And I think, as a lot of gay men, I struggled coming out and then finding love and having a relationship. And I knew that my journey wasn't, I guess, a singular journey, meaning that it wasn't just my own journey in that regard. And I know from the friends that I had and the people that I speak to that it was it's a bigger problem. 70% of gay men actually suffer from loneliness, which is actually double, the general population. So there are some things that are happening within our experience that relate to us struggling to, either get into relationships or have lasting relationships where it gets to love. Because I think, the opposite of loneliness really is love. So yeah, I help people to attract that so that they can have the relationship that they want. I say happy and I say fulfilling and I say, loving, because that's usually what people want. But, you can insert anything. It's really about finding the relationship that you are really longing for.
Absolutely. Well, let me just ask you this pointed question. Cristiano, why should we hire you? What are your specific qualifications, and what sets you apart from other, relationship experts for gay and same gender loving men?
Yeah, good question. I mean, apart from, 20 years of experience coaching, I've obviously got my own experience in finding love, along with, helping hundreds of gay men over the last few years. Why am I different? I mean, first of all, there is not a lot of gay coaches out there that specifically help people with relationships. I mean, there are a few. Obviously, I know, some of the
That's
other ones
true.
that are out there. But when you look at, coaching or relationship coaches, that, there is a huge amount of them that focus on the straight community, right? Now, I've looked at that, especially throughout my journey of wanting love, because I think, if it was 5 years ago or longer, there probably wasn't really anyone out there. Or there might have been some that were harder to find. Like when I went looking for it, there was no one that looked like they had any experience in really helping gay men. So it's only been the last few years that really I think that has grown, and there have been a few that have emerged. But from my experience working with people who had, been focusing on the straight community, they didn't understand the struggles, right? When I talk about how,
Right.
loneliness is double for gay people than it is for straight, there's a different approach that needs to be taken when it comes to helping gay men, right? So understanding what we've gone through, our
Right.
experience, why it's more difficult for us to find love, where we struggled in our own internal battles, because again, it's not just in the loneliness sector that, the mental health numbers are all a lot higher. So for example, 50% of gay men will suffer from depression. 60% will suffer from anxiety. A lot of that's social anxiety, right? Again, that's 2 or 3 times higher than the general population. So when we get to some of these numbers, it's about understanding our experience so that we can help people and speak to people. Because I know for myself that if I had someone helping me 10, 15 years ago when I was really looking for it and I was really struggling at my most, then I think it would have saved me a hell of a lot of time. I had to go on my journey, and I'm grateful that I've been on it now, because I get to now use that experience to help other gay men. But going through it, you sometimes just don't know where to look. And that's why I feel like I moved into this space, because I wanted to make it easy for people, especially gay men, to find love and understand how it really works for us.
Absolutely. Well, you acquit yourself well, and we're so glad that we have people like you, because you're right. There are just not a lot of relationship experts for gay and SGL men, which is sad.
Yeah.
We're going to really get deep into all of this a little bit later. But before I move to something else, something just popped in my head
Sure.
about this whole issue rather of body image. Let's talk about that a little bit, because it appears that we gay men are just so fixated on, a certain body image, particularly that muscular body, and we're not happy unless we have that, even though we very well may not be muscular. That's what we're looking for. So, Christiano, let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. No, I understand. And that's such a huge thing that happens within our community. And, from the research and the things that I've done, a lot of that comes down to a couple of things. So number one is that, growing up, gay and in the closet, it's a very internalized experience. And, for a lot of gay men, people don't come out until, their 20s or 30s or 40s or 50s, especially back, few decades ago. Recently it's probably gotten a bit easier, but
Right.
we're talking about the general population for us as gay men. We keep a lot of that to ourselves, so it's a very internalized thing. So what that does is it does a couple of things. On one side of the equation, we don't want anyone else to discover this, because we feel that if we were to share this part of us, we wouldn't be liked, we wouldn't be loved, we wouldn't be accepted. So what we do is we try to do everything else in different parts of our life to be perfect. We want to have the perfect body. We want to have the perfect job. We want to have the perfect friendships, the perfect this, and this, right? And what that does is we strive for perfection within ourselves in such a way that we put so much pressure on ourselves. And so then because we strive for perfection, we expect the people that we are trying to date or have relations with to be perfect as well. And again, as you said, we may not very well be perfect, because we know the truth of the matter is that no one is going to be perfect. So one, we don't live up to our standards and we beat ourselves up. Two, the people that we're trying to date don't live up to our standards, and then we judge them for not being perfect as well. So that creates this cycle of effect where we're like I said, we want the perfect thing, but we're not perfect ourselves. We can't attain it. The second side of the story is that porn is so easily available. And for young men, especially young gay men, that might be one of the ways that they get to kind of first initially express themselves and kind of see what this is all about. Porn is actually one of the biggest things that is probably one of the biggest addictions that gay men suffer from. And a lot of them don't really realize how much of a problem it is. So when we're
Right.
watching porn, most people are watching certain types of porn, and most
Right.
of the porn stars are probably the unattainable perfection that we're striving for in our mind. So we get used to being turned on by all of these things, that when we get something that isn't a little bit perfect, we go, no, this isn't right, this isn't it. And we judge everything by what we're seeing in the porn. And then we get addicted to it. We get addicted to the dopamine. We get addicted to almost seeing a different person all the time, which is why so many people, jump from man to man to man, because they're so used to seeing something different when they're watching porn and getting themselves off in those ways. So those are the two big things that really happen, and why it's difficult. And then that leads to loneliness, because we go in the cycle of it. We go into the cycle of it. We go into the cycle of it. So, yeah, I'm sure you probably can relate to that as well.
Well, I'm so glad, Cristiano, that you brought up the whole issue about porn, because I have interviewed many porn stars, and they will tell you that it takes like multiple takes to create a scene. And unfortunately, you have too many gay men who believe that what they see on the screen can happen spontaneously. And I tell people, I said, listen, porn is not real sex, because what you see on the screen takes a lot of work to create and produce. And unfortunately, you have too many gay SGL men who think that, bam, we can do this immediate, and that's like the gold standard to their sex lives.
Correct. Yeah, they think that that's the only way it can be.
So,
and if they don't have it, then it's not right. Then there's something wrong with them or their partner that they're having sex with, right?
Amen. I'm so glad we touched on that. Okay, let's do this right now. Let's travel through the corridors of time so we can find out your backstory, because that will give us a window into who you are today.
Sure.
So are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, well, all right. Where were you born and raised?
Where was I born? I was born in Toronto, Canada. But I left there when I was just a baby, like less than 1 year old, and I moved to England. And I lived in Basingstoke in England, which is just outside of London, until I was about 8 years old. And then I moved to Australia, to a place called the Central Coast, which is a town just outside of Sydney. And that's where I kind of grew up until I was about 21. And then I moved to Sydney after that.
Okay, great. I always like to ask my special guest this question because I really get a chuckle out of it. Here it is. What was Cristiano like as a boy, a little nipper? Give us like 3 qualities or characteristics that best describe you.
Yeah, 3 qualities of me as a little nipper. I would say that before the world had its toll on me when I was a teenager, I would have said that I was open, I was fun, and I was truthful to the core, meaning that I was always having. I had 3 siblings. And when I was living in England, I had lots of different friendships and whatnot. And I just remember being young and being liked, and always having fun, and just being a real honest with every single thing that I had seen, and truthful to a core. Life changed when I moved to Australia, though, because that's when I came to Australia, and life was very different from then in the UK than it is to Australia. And I fell into getting bullied a lot, pretty much straight away into moving. I guess I was the new kid. I was the youngest kid. I was the smallest kid. And then on top of that, there was, the flamboyancy. So I got picked on and ganged up on by pretty much everyone in school. And I went from a place where I felt like I had a lot of friends to almost pretty much 0 friends throughout, my schooling life in Australia. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I can relate to that because when I was a kid and an adolescent, I was bullied because I was the nerd. I really wasn't that much into sports. So I totally get it. So how did that impact you? I believe you have said that it caused a lot of depression, social anxiety for you.
Yeah, totally. I mean, 40 to 50% of gay men get bullied in school or in the workplace, etc.
Yeah.
And that's what's reported. I mean, I feel like it's probably a lot higher from the people I speak to, but that's what the statistics are saying. And that's double the rest of the population as kids. So probably about 25% of kids would normally get bullied. We double that. And we're specifically getting bullied because of our sexuality as well. So for me, yeah, it was difficult when you have really got no friends around, when you're getting called a loser, a faggot, you're getting pushed around, you're getting, teased and made fun of in front of, group of people, maybe even, the whole year or whatever, for whatever different reasons, right? So it really does play a toll in itself. And that's where it led to social anxiety, right? I was afraid to be around other people. I had depression for sure. I did not, I didn't understand why, this had happened. Like I said, I remember keep wishing, I wish I'd never moved to Australia, because, like I said, I remember being in the UK and having a lot of friends as a kid, and then moving to Australia just was completely the opposite. So, there was a lot of like resentment about why we moved to Australia. The depression was there, the social anxiety. Was very lonely. I didn't know who to talk to because obviously I didn't want to go home and tell my parents that I was getting bullied, because if they asked why, they might figure out about me being gay. So I was hiding it all inside. It was very internalized, which is the toughest thing, of course, because again, you don't want anyone to know any of this stuff. So you build up this kind of wall where, someone might push you, you get up, you run away, and then you cry, you cry in the toilet or something. You don't want to show anyone to see weakness, because they'll keep going if they see the weakness, right? So, it definitely led to that there. And then when I left school and moved into the workplace, the bullying continued on. I got bullied in the workplace by multiple managers of mine. One of them even, put their hands around my neck and pushed me up against the wall, without anyone being there, and basically telling me that, I need to listen to him and no one's going to believe a little faggot like me. All these different things. So, I kind of had this jaded perception of the world and what people thought of gay men, right? So for me, the process of coming out was even harder because of these negative experiences that I had with people who were not just children, but also adults. So it kind of led to me having, issues with anger and sadness and fear and hurt and guilt around a lot of different things in my life. And, we always put that on us, especially as kids growing up. If you're getting pushed around and bullied for almost anything of who you are, you think that you're wrong at your core. So, when I finally did come out, I got caught up in the party scene of Sydney because, that's where I met people. And so I would go down to Sydney, I would go to clubs and bars and I would drink, and then it led to drugs and I would party. And that would be my escape. And I would be able to be around other gay men and actually feel like I could have friendships and build that there. So there was a good part of it, where I was getting all these things of like, I was getting friends and people liking me, and I was able to show myself and be myself. And it allowed me to do that. But then on the other side of it, I was so caught up in the drinking, the party lifestyle, the drugs, that I kind of lost myself in so many ways. And I was masking the depression and the anxiety and the loneliness through constant alcohol and drugs and partying and stuff like that. So that kind of went on for, most of my 20s and into early 30s, until I really kind of had to make some changes, in my life. That's kind of what a lot of gay men go through, is, especially if you're from a bigger city, is that you kind of jump straight into something where it feels good and you feel fine and you feel accepted, but it's so easy to get caught up because, 1 in 3 gay men suffer from addictions as well. And like I said, that's going to be from alcohol or drugs or sex and porn. Again, I think the number's higher, especially when it comes to porn, but people don't see porn as a problem as much as it really, really is. Because did you know that the way that porn works in your brain, it's the same hit that you get from having heroin? The brain scans are the same. So it's just as addictive as heroin is. So it's crazy that people don't realize how bad it is. But again, if it's you've been doing this since you were 13, 14 years of age, and you're 40, 50, or in your 30s, you don't, and you haven't had a relationship, and this may be your only way to express a part of you or see that side of it, I do understand how people don't see it as a problem, right?
I agree with you, Cristiano, because I believe that porn desensitizes you, because I've talked to people who are regular porn viewers, users, and some of them have said they need it in order to get that feeling of exhilaration. They need it more intense. They need something different, so it's like the dog trying to chase his tail.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. And I've spoken to a lot of people who've gotten off it, and it takes them a long time to either get off it or to actually then regain their desires in other ways, right? So, people then suffer from, things like erectile dysfunction for a period of time, because of their brain being so wired to what turns them on, that they can't necessarily, they might necessarily not be able to be having sex with their partners or even having sexual partners because of the fact that it doesn't turn them on. Lots of people use porn in sex to get them to where they need to go, because it's not actually, normal for people to feel someone around them as well. So there's a lot of things that happen that come from it, and that's a lot of the reasons why it is hard to get off, because people don't want to feel like they're struggling with a sexual problem, especially when it comes to their manhood, because a lot of people relate that to them being less of a man because they can't get an erection. And the fact is that in reality, I used to work in a sexual health clinic when I was younger. 1 in 3 men suffer from, sexual performance issues, whether that's erectile dysfunction or premature ejaculation. So premature ejaculation is going to be very common if people are using porn all the time, because most of the time people are getting off in a couple of minutes because of how worked up they are from what it is that they're seeing, So if more people know that these numbers are out there, that it isn't as uncommon, then it takes away the stigma, and it takes away the reality of going, okay, maybe I should do something about that, because erectile dysfunction is mostly due to the chemical things that are going through our brain, which relate to us getting turned on and stuff. And so we can rewire that, but it just takes time and effort and energy and the desire to do that as well,
So you're saying that ED can be more psychological and emotional as opposed to physical, something wrong with you physically?
Of course, there's both sides to it as well. People can have certain things, like, well, maybe they've used certain medications that's led to it, or maybe they've had an injury somewhere that's led to it. But, more than 50, probably 60, 70% of it is psychological and emotional related to it. And again, that relates to how we see things, perceive things, but also what we've been conditioned to, which lead to different chemicals going through the brain to rewire the neural cortexes that actually, speak to Mr. Johnson downstairs, right?
Got you. Well, how did you turn the corner to heal?
How did I turn the corner?
Did you have like an epiphany or?
Yeah, good question. So, for about that time where I'd been, like I said, caught up in the party lifestyle and doing that, there was only 2 ways that I was ever trying to find relationships. And I never had any relationships that lasted more than a couple of months, right? And even those ones, they weren't even serious. They were just the small things. So I kept trying to go out every weekend, trying to find a partner. I would do all the things that you would normally do. I'm going to get a new outfit. I'm going to get a haircut. I'm going to spend money on this ticket and drugs and alcohol, hoping that tonight I'm going to meet someone, right? So I'd spend, thousands and thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years trying to find love that way. On top of that, I would be online on all the different apps thinking that, I was on Grindr or Scruff or whatever, thinking that was an app that was going to make me meet someone, right? Well, whereas we know now, like they're hookup apps. They're not there designed for it. But I was going on there hoping that I would go on a date with someone and all this stuff. So I'm trying all these avenues to meet stuff and not understanding why I'm not getting the results, where I'm either getting ghosted or catfished, or I go on a date with someone and I like them and they don't like me, or vice versa, right? It was always that. And that happened for all the time, again, that I was caught up. Right. And so I did that for 10, 15 years. And they say, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting the same result is insanity. Well, you could lock me
Exactly.
up and throw away the key because that's how insane I was, thinking that it was going to be different every weekend. And I would constantly come home feeling depressed and lonely, because it never happened that way for me. So, throughout that period, I always did other small things that were in the personal development space because, like, luckily I had some friends that were doing different things and they'd invite me. And I was like, I'd always say yes because for growing up as a kid who got bullied and had no friends to then friends, I kind of turned into the yes person. If someone ever invited me to something, I would always say yes. I would never miss someone's birthday. I would never miss this, and this because I remember the times when I would never have any friends and never get invited. So if someone invited me to something that I wasn't my style, I would go to it. And so luckily I had friends who were into different things in personal development. They invited me to this and that. And so I kind of slowly started planting the seed there. And I'd done it, I started to do a counseling degree because I was going to get into counseling. But I realized quickly that counseling wasn't the way to go, and it was to get into the coaching. And so for me, when I really was going to commit to stepping into the coaching, I said to myself, well, how can I help people if I haven't helped myself? So I spent, a good 12 months period where I said, I need to focus solely on me. So at that point, I was working in corporate, I had a team of 300 people. I was stressed to the max. I was using alcohol and drugs to manage my anxiety and depression. So I kind of decided that I had to give up everything and just focus solely on being sober and then just jumping in and doing all these courses. And so one of the courses that I did was NLP, which I have now become a master in NLP, which is neurolinguistics programming, and it's a modality that we use in coaching. Not only am I a master in it, I actually help now facilitate a online program that helps new coaches and people go through and get trained in NLP.
Wow.
So I've taken it to a level of mastery because I believe in mastering my skill set so that I can help other gay men and help myself and continue to grow and as whatnot. But through doing that, the work there, I was able to work on dealing with the trauma because there's a couple of different techniques there that we use: timeline therapy, parts integration, one-day personal breakthroughs, that all help people to integrate and change the way that, the neurons fire. They use some of these techniques actually in what they call the warrior program, which is people coming back from war who've had to deal with trauma through the war to help them to clear out the stuff that's in their actual, their DNA or within your body stored. So it releases the stored emotions, negative emotions from your body so that you can then no longer be related to the trauma. You can move past the trauma as well. So I did that for myself, mastered that. And that's kind of the journey that I went on. And, throughout that journey, I got deeper into my spirituality. I worked on my emotions, my mindset, my physical health. And then that's when I started to see the results. And then that's when I found love, when I started to really get to a place of love and self-love for myself and healing was when I started attracting different men into my life. I was like, wow, like, where were you 5 years ago? Where were you 5 years ago?
Right.
But I wasn't going to attract someone who is happy, healthy, and loving when I wasn't that way, because people who are healthy and happy and loving don't want to date a toxic person. And when I say toxic, I mean someone who's unhappy, unhealthy, who is maybe using things to fulfill them in a certain way, right? Instead of trying to give that fulfillment to yourself. So when I got to that place, that's when these people showed up. And that's when I started to experience, real connection with another man.
That is great, because when you are broken, you send those vibes out and people can pick up on that.
Yeah. I mean, probably people out there listening might be thinking, going, have you ever met someone where you just, you've got a vibe, you've got an energy off them and you go, I don't know what it is, but I don't like this person, right? That's the energy that we put off when we're in those states, right? So think about the energy that you're putting off or that you're receiving from other people. You need to work on that so that you give off the vibes that connect to the people that you're trying to attract.
Okay, my audience, you better listen to that. Yeah, that makes so much sense. And more of us need to do that. Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty, Christiano, about dating and relationships. So my first question to you is, What is the biggest mistake gay SGO men make when trying to find a partner?
The biggest mistake that people make is they think is one we've already kind of been touching on is that the perfection thing is that expecting perfection but not necessarily being perfect yourself, because no one can live up to that, right? So having unrealistic expectations, expecting that this other person is going to fulfill all of the things in life that's going to make you happy. You can't look for your happiness in another person. You can't expect someone else to fulfill you. You can't expect someone else to love you so you love yourself. We need to flip the script. We need to love ourselves so we have love to give. We need to find happiness and fulfillment in our life outside of a relationship. Because if we don't have that, we're not going to find it in someone. We might have this moment of what they call the love bubble, where you might start a relationship and it feels good. But if you're already still dealing with loneliness or depression or anxiety, that will quickly fade and those things will come back. And that's why often people say, oh, the honeymoon period is over. The truth of the honeymoon period over is that the love bubble is over.
Right.
And you're back to really how you feel before that. So if you want the honeymoon period to stay on, you've got to continue to work on yourself and be happy without that person so that you can be happy together. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest mistakes, is expecting too much from someone else to fulfill you and make you happy. You've got to be that person that does that for yourself. And then you can allow yourself to, like I said, be happy and loving with someone else as well.
That makes great sense. What are some effective ways for us to meet suitable partners? We know that the apps, that's just primarily for hookups. So how can we go about it?
So yes,
venues, that sort of thing.
So whenever I talk to people, clients or potential people who are talking to them, I ask a couple of key questions. One, do you know who you are? And two, do you know what you're looking for? Do you know what you're looking for? So first of all, 95% of people don't know who they are. And, there's almost the same amount of people that don't know what they're looking for. And when I say 95% of people, I'm talking about the people that come to me. So I'm not saying that everyone in the world doesn't know who they are. I'm just talking about the people who come to me. Sure. They can't answer the question too much, right? They might say, I'm a nice person. I just want a nice partner. If that's what you're looking for, the struggle is that, it's way too broad, and there's so many different factors to what those things mean to you, right? Because, we have to dig a little bit deeper. We have to get to know ourselves on a deeper level. Because when we know ourselves, we know the things that are good about us, and we also know the things that maybe we're not so happy about ourselves for. So when I say know who you are, don't pretend everything's perfect and happy and shiny when you go on a date with someone, because that's not real. That's not authentic. People do not relate to that, right? 99% of people who go on their first date try to be someone that they think that person wants them to be, instead of trying to just show up and being themselves, So first of all, when we talk about where to go, I don't say that the online apps are a bad thing. I'm going to say that there are a few apps that are specifically designed for hookups, right? Which we know that are Grindr and Scruff, and there are some more. There's plenty out there. Right? I don't keep up with the trends of how many there are, because pop up all the time, right? But
a lot.
You've got to look at if you're looking to get into a serious relationship, think about the kinds of app that you're on. Go on to something that might be a little bit more in depth about getting to know who you are. Things like Hinge or Bumble or Tinder, things like those ones that are focused a bit more on actual dating, and where you can feel a bit more information in your profile. Because, if you're on an app where it's talking about how far away you are, that's all about sex, right? When you're on the apps and it doesn't necessarily focus on that, that's not the priority. It's about the person. You can see the profile. You can read things about them. That's when it is a bit more about maybe getting to date. Now, if you're looking at profiles and you're swiping, left or right on everyone, which is meaning, yes to everyone or whatever it is, because I've forgotten it's been a while for myself, but I think that way goes one way or the other. But if you're that person who's doing that, and you want someone to look at your profile and really get to know you, put the effort into to getting to know yourself so you fill out the profile correctly, but to then spend time looking at profiles, right? Like, don't just swipe because of the picture. If you want someone to get to know you for you, you need to look at the profile and get to know them, right? So a lot of people focus solely on just the look, whereas, of course, that's important, but get to know. If someone's got a picture and nothing written below, do you want to swipe with them? Like, are they putting any effort into showing you who they are? You've got to really spend time on that. And so when you see people who've put effort into what they've written, that's probably a potential person you might want to go, hey, look, this person's wanting me to know these things about them. They're probably looking for a little bit more than just sex, right? So going online isn't a bad thing. It does work for a lot of people. But again, it's about where you're going, what you're doing, and how much effort you're putting into actually really trying to find out more about these people. Understanding what are some of the questions you can ask them as well, because there's this level of thing called building rapport, right? Some people jump straight into things, or they just be like, hey, how are you? Oh, hey, hi, you know, like the same repetitive stuff. Like if you see something in the profile, go, hey, I saw that you like this thing. I'd love to hear a bit more about that, right? People love to talk about themselves. So if you ask a question about them that's open, it's going to allow that person to connect. And when you start to have these conversations like that, then it's about taking it to another level, especially online. So people just necessarily don't know how to engage and connect and build rapport online with people. That's probably some of the big things. So yeah, that's probably some big advice that I would say. Don't think of online dating as just sex. It's about going to the right places and approaching it the right way.
I am loving that you are here, because you have just you're creating all of these avenues in my head, and it's like I've got sparks firing all in my head. So okay, let me try to do it like this.
Yeah.
What questions should one ask if one is trying to find himself and figure out who he is? Are there like 3 basic questions that you should ask yourself to figure that out?
Okay, then. Here, think of it like this, okay? If I was to ask 5 of the closest people to me, like, what are the 5 qualities you like most about me? And then on the flip side, what are 5 qualities you find annoying about me? Right? You might find that there are some consistencies in your personality that way. Like some people might say they love this about you, and that this is some things that you have. So you're going to, by getting some data from people that are close to you, you might understand, hey, these are some of the qualities that I'm projecting. Like maybe he's a great person who he listens to me. I love sharing stuff with him. You know, he makes me feel comfortable. Whatever it is, you know, there's going to be stuff like that. You know, he's got a big heart. Right, like that. Those are some things you can start. That's going to start. You know, you going, okay, this is the qualities of me. And then someone might say, you know, sometimes he cuts me off when he's speaking, or he's always late. You know, things like that. And then you can go, okay, here's some qualities. Or you know, I sense that he's really sad at times. You know, he's often sad, right? Because people will say some of those things that when you ask the right questions. So necessarily always asking yourself. Sometimes it's best to ask some people around you, and you'll get a good way to start. But if you want to talk about what are some things you can ask yourself, like when people say who we are, people often will say, look, my name is Wyatt, and I'm 39 years old, and I do this, and I do this, and I do this.
I wish I were.
I didn't want to be. I'm not sure your age, but I was just.
No.
You know,
I wish I were 39 again. Yes, but I get you. Go ahead,
but
please.
You know what I mean? Is people will, if I ask you who you are, oftentimes people give you statistics like that. Like, this is the data on me. My name is Christiano. Right. I'm 36. I live in Bali. I was born in here. This is what I do for a living. That's a lot of the times what people say. So when I talk about who you are, I would talk more about the qualities. What are the things you like that you feel like that you like about yourself? What are the things that you pride yourselves in? Like if I was to say to you, what are the 3 things in life you're most proud of? You might say, the way that I show up for my friends, right? The way that I how hard working I am. You know, I've always prided myself on the work that I've done. And then you might say, I'm proud of being gay, right? So you might then get an understanding of, okay, so friendship's important to you, hard work, and like your authentic self, being yourself, right? So that's a good way for you to start to say that as well. And then again, on the other side, you might ask yourself, what are three of the things that, what are the three biggest regrets you've had in your life? And it might be, the way that you spoke to a friend of yours that ended a friendship, or it might be what you did, when you were a young kid, etc. So when we talk about some of those things, might be some of the things that maybe you're holding on to some negative charge to, right? Because if you've got regrets to something, you have yet to move past it. There's some trauma there that relates to those moments, right? I look at my life now and I say I don't really have any regrets because I've worked through it. If you asked me 3, 4, 5 years ago, I would have a lot of them, right? But doing the work on them takes away the negative charge, which allows us to spend more of our energy on the positive things, what we're working towards, instead of what we're moving away from, right? Oftentimes people are running away from problems instead of moving towards what they really want. So answering some of those questions will help you to understand, one, what you like and where you're going and what are the qualities that you admire in yourself, but three, what are the things that you're still probably running away from as well.
Okay. We men sometimes have a problem openly, honestly, and effectively communicating.
Oh, yes.
And we think that the other person is Karnak who could read your mind, Mm-hmm. So, Christiano, what can we do? What strategies can we use? What can we do to break through that barrier so that we can openly, effectively, and honestly communicate?
Sure. Well, first of all, if you want to be honest with someone else, you have to be honest with yourself, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of times people are wearing a mask or they've got walls up, and people don't necessarily always know they've got a wall up because it's been put up, energetically through, your experiences, right? If you've been hurt in the past, you have another layer or another wall and you have another mask on, right? So if you want to learn to be honest with other people, you have to learn to figure out, how do I break down the walls? How do I start taking off these masks? Like, how am I going to stop people pleasing? Because again, the reason why people oftentimes are not honest to other people is because, one, they say, I don't want to hurt someone's feelings, or like you're trying to please others, right? You're trying to make someone else happy, or like not trying to hurt their feelings. So when you take off the mask and you get down to your core and really like be honest with yourself about yourself, you start to then be able to raise your self-worth. You start to raise your self-confidence. You start to raise your self-love. And when we can raise those things, we start to then be able to see the truth of who we are. And when we're able to be the truth of who we are, we start to then go, okay, what are some of the things in my life where I have boundaries, or where I feel like I need to stick up for myself, or I need to be open and honest with someone else? Because when you have higher levels of self-esteem and self-confidence and self-love, you don't allow certain things to happen, right? So when you can be open and honest and have better communication with yourself, you're going to be able to do that with other people. So being kind of self-aware, to know how you come across to other people, be self-aware to know that, hey, look, if I say this to them, if I learn how to say these in the right way, then it's not going to be me being a nasty, mean bitch, right? Because sometimes that's what we think. If I say this, I'm going to be a nasty bitch, right? It's about learning how to effectively communicate. And by doing that, we need to learn how to effectively listen as well. The most number one thing is that we think that we need to get our point across. That's the most important thing. Whereas the truth is, sometimes if we understand where another person is coming from, we can oftentimes realize that most things that people are saying or doing probably have nothing to do with us. It's more about them, because we realize the things that we were saying and we were doing had nothing to do with the other person. It was all about us. So when we solve our problems, a lot of the times we solve a lot of the problems that we have within different relationships, because we take away expectations. We take away the need for someone else to do this and do that to meet a need of ours. So fulfill your own needs first, and you'll start to see how relationships also change as well. Then you'll be able to learn to be more honest and communicate effectively with other people as well.
That's a really good point, because they say that listening is proactive and hearing is reactive. And I think you have too many people who hear instead of listen. Um, oh, emotional avoidance. What is that? Let's talk about that.
Emotional avoidance.
Being emotionally avoidant.
Yeah. I mean, for gay men, this is so common, emotional avoidance, right? Because again, growing up,
Mm-hmm.
we have been very internalized. We learn to control our emotions because we're trying to show people maybe a sign of perfection, or so that, because if we show that we're really great and amazing at all these different things, people don't notice that we're different, right? So if I'm the best son, if
Mm-hmm.
I'm the best employee, if I'm the perfect body, people don't necessarily go and focus on the gay thing. So we learn a lot of the time to avoid our emotions, because if we're overly emotional, we think that may come across that we are gay. So it's actually taught. We learn this through the especially if you've been bullied as well. You even learn to put up another wall. So when I was talking about the wall and the mask that we have, that's avoiding the emotions, I guess, for ourselves, but also to project out to other people. And that's why when people suffer from addictions, why they become such problems in their life is because you can't always handle your emotions when you're on a different substance. And maybe that's when the real truth or the real demons come out, because you may be suffering deep down with depression or anxiety or loneliness or whatever it is. And that comes to the surface when, when we kind of take drugs and alcohol, right? And that's why they become such big problems for gay men, because, the real problems come out when we're on the juice,
Okay. Wow. Very good points. Let's talk about love language and love currency. What are those?
Love languages are the different ways that people, gay men or straight people, whatever you want to call, receive and give love. Now, there's 5 different love languages. They've got, you've got acts of service, you've got gifts, you've got physical touch, you've got quality time, and there's one more. It'll come to me in just a second. But what this really means is like, we like to receive love and give love in different ways. And oftentimes, the way that we like to receive love was possibly most likely the way that we maybe didn't receive love when we were growing up. So what do I mean by that? So your parents were going to have a different love language to you, most likely, not always. You might have the same as people, but most likely your partner's going to have a different love language to you. So, for example, if we talk about, quality time and say acts of service, right? So your parents might feel like I do all these things for my children. That's how I show them love. Like, for example, that was my father. He grew up. He did a lot of things as a father for the family, and that was the way he showed love. Final one was words of affirmation. So expressing the words. That was the 5th one, by the way. And he wasn't very expressive in saying that he loved us. In fact, I never really ever heard it until I was an adult. So for me, one of the ways that I like to receive love is words of affirmation, because I didn't receive that growing up. So now I love to express myself very, very much with words of affirmation as well. And the other one is quality time as well. And again, growing up, I had 4 siblings. So, the time was divided from your parents. So for me, I didn't feel like I had enough quality time with my parents growing up. So that led to me desiring quality time as a way of receiving love. So with my partner, words of affirmation for me and quality time are the way that I like to receive love. And then I'll try to give love that way. Until now that I know and learn and understand this, I can give love in the way that my partner wants it. So my partner is very much words of affirmation. So we're on the same page there. But he also is acts of service. So he also does so many things for me to show me that he loves me, right? Whereas I like quality time. And so sometimes, he'll do all these things for me, and then I want to spend time with him, and he'll go, if I haven't done something that maybe he's wanted me to do, he could get upset with me and say, hey, like, he might think I don't love him because I'm not giving him love that way. So I've had to learn to go, okay, well, me doing some of these things, even though they're not my style, I have to do that so that he feels receiving love in the way that he wants to receive love. And then, for example, for us, quality time means that if we're going to have dinner together, then we're not just sitting there on the phone, right? So we sometimes struggle with
Right.
that because maybe he'll be on the phone and I'll be like, it'd be nice if we could just have dinner together and not be having distractions. So we go through the ebbs and the flows of it, but we try to focus on giving love in the way that they want it, instead of necessarily the way that we want to give it as well. So understanding the love languages means that you and the people that you're around, you can give love in the way they want it, so they feel love, and you understand each other on a bit of a deeper level as well.
This is where effective communication and effective listening comes into play. Because you got to communicate well and you've got to listen to what your partner is saying, the body language, the vibes, and all of that.
Totally.
Am I right or am I wrong?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yes. Effective communication isn't just the words we say. It's the energy we put off. It's the way we speak. It's our body language. So it's a real dance. And so that's why when we say effective listening isn't just about hearing, because hearing is one way of listening, but listening is like a full sensory thing of being aware of the way things have been said, not just what is being said, the way that someone's expressing themselves, what is not being said here. Like when you can get to that level of it, then you've got a real level of connection to the point where you know really what's going on without necessarily having to hear the words, right? For example, if you're someone who's hearing, someone might be complaining at you for this reason, but if you're effectively listening, you might go, the reason why they're doing this is because they don't feel loved right now. Maybe I need to show them love, right? So that's when we say effective listening is really getting the understanding of what's actually going on here instead of these are the words that are being said,
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that. You've got a podcast. I believe it's called Total Boss. Tell us about that. Is there a particular meaning behind the title of your podcast?
Yeah, it's the Total Boss podcast, and I've been doing that for almost 60 episodes now. So just, a little over a year and a bit now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So the Total Boss, when I created the podcast, I was kind of, I was really thinking about if I was to what would I really want to be in my life, or what would I think that people would like to focus on if they were really in control of their life, what would they be? And I said, a total boss, because it stands for tenacity, originality, talent, authenticity, and then legendary. So total boss. So really stepping into your authentic self, really being the leader of your life, and showing up as a boss in not just work, but in life and relationships, right? Really becoming a master at all the different areas of life. So it's called the Total Boss podcast because I focus on trying to give little tips and trips and sometimes have special guests on that focus on really teaching people how to become a total boss in their own life. Yeah.
I love it. Where can we find Total Boss?
Total Boss podcast you can find on Spotify, Google, Apple, all the main places where podcasts are found. You can find it. Yeah, you can probably search at Google and you'll see all the different the podcasts that come up. But if you've got iPhone, go to Apple Podcasts. It's on there. If you're a Spotify person, you can find it on there as well. Yeah.
Well, before we leave, tell us what you have in store for the rest of the year into 2023.
Yeah, so for the rest of the year, I'm busy. I've got a busy schedule when it comes down to clients. So, I'm quite fortunate to have a good selection of clients at the moment, moving into 2023. So, normally I run a monthly free event that, helps gay men to understand. It's called the Gay Men's Looking for Love Masterclass. It's a 2-hour event where we focus on all the things that gay men struggle at, why they fail at finding love. But then we talk about the 5 foundations that they can use to step into having and creating that relationship for themselves. So I'm not running one until the early next year because I've got a full schedule. So there will be one back in January. And I think it's a good time to give people a break over the Christmas time because it is a busy period for everybody. But other than that, on a personal level, I'm going to Australia to visit my family, and they're going to meet my partner for the very first time because I live in Bali.
Nice.
My family in Australia, so going to visit and doing that is something special because they've never met anyone, because this is my first real long-term partner that I've had. So yeah, I'm excited for that as well.
Oh, that is so nice.
Yeah.
Well, how can us grown folk follow you, connect with you? Give us all of your social media, please.
Yeah. So you can search on Facebook. I'm, Christiano.green at the end of Facebook. So you can search my name. I don't think there's many or if any other Christiano Greens out there. And if you want to search me on Instagram or TikTok, it's Christiano.coach. But again, if you put in my name, Christiano Green, it'll come up as well. So you can search me there and I want it, or you can go to my website, www.christianogreen.com, and it has all my handles, as well as you can find my podcast and everything through there as well.
Wonderful. Well, Mr. Christiano Green, I want to thank you for stopping by. Wyatt, let me say I'm so glad I had you on, because this was insightful, instructive, and entertaining. And you all listen up. He gave us a lot of good advice here. So I'm so glad you stopped by.
Well, thank you so much, Wyatt, for inviting me and reaching out to me on Instagram to have you on your podcast. So I just appreciate being there. I have the opportunity to share with people and get my message out there, because, if I can do some damage on the mental health numbers, meaning decrease them, then, that's my goal in my career and life as well. So, so thank you for having me here to listen, to speak to your audience as well.
Well, thank you, sir.
All right. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
So there you have it. You can find the official Wyatt podcast page at WyattEvans.com, the go-to destination for LGBTQ news. Welcome back there, guys. I trust that was a valuable listen for you all, and I'm sure that you might have some questions or some comments. So as always, feel free to share them with me. You can, comment them below, or you can reach out to me on, Instagram or Facebook, etc. All right, guys, I'm going to catch you next week. Always remember, you've got this and I've got you.